It started with a letter. Not an email, not a text message. A real letter, folded twice, slightly creased at the edges, and written in a careful, familiar handwriting. Margaret hadn't seen that handwriting in over 30 years. She found it in her mailbox on a quiet Tuesday morning in early October, tucked between a grocery flyer and a bill she didn't feel like opening. At first, she thought it was a mistake, but then she saw her name, not Miss Collins, not Margaret, just Maggie. And no one had called her Maggie in decades. She stood there on her front porch longer than she expected, staring at the envelope like it might disappear if she looked away. Then, slowly, she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Hi, Maggie. I wasn't sure if this address was still yours. I hope it is. I drove past the old neighborhood last week. Your house looks exactly the same. It made me wonder how you've been. Daniel Bien." That was it. No explanation. No return address. Just a name she hadn't said out loud in years. Margaret sat down at her kitchen table, the letter still in her hands. Daniel Harper. They had met when they were both 19. Back then, life felt wide open, like something waiting to be written. They were neighbors first, then friends, then something that never quite found the right name. Daniel was the kind of person who noticed things, the way Margaret always tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the way she stirred her coffee without ever drinking it right away, the way she laughed, quiet at first, then all at once. They spent entire summers talking about everything and nothing, sitting on the hood of his old car, walking down streets that didn't lead anywhere in particular, sharing pieces of their lives like they had all the time in the world. And maybe back then, they thought they did. But life has a way of moving forward, even when you're not ready. Margaret met someone. Daniel got a job offer in another state. There was no big fight, no dramatic goodbye, just a slow drifting apart like two boats carried in different directions by the same tide. For a while, they wrote to each other. Short letters at first, then longer ones. Birthdays, holidays, updates about work, about life, and then fewer letters. Until one day, they stopped altogether. Margaret folded Daniel's letter carefully and placed it back on the table. She wasn't sure what she was feeling. Surprise, certainly. Curiosity. And something else she couldn't quite name. Something that felt a lot like standing in a room she hadn't entered in years, and realizing everything inside was exactly where she left it. She didn't respond right away. Days passed, then a week. She told herself it didn't matter, that it was just a letter from someone she used to know. But every morning, she found herself checking the mailbox just a little more carefully. On the 8th day, she sat down with a pen. She stared at the blank page for a long time. Then she wrote, "Hi, Daniel. Yes, it's still my address. And yes, I'm still here." She hesitated before signing it. She hadn't been Maggie in so long, but somehow it felt right. His reply came faster this time. 4 days. "I'm glad you wrote back. I wasn't sure you would. I'm in town for a while, taking some time off. If you'd like, maybe we could catch up. Coffee?" Daniel Margaret read the letter twice. Then a third time. Her first instinct was to say no, not because she didn't want to see him, but because she didn't know what it would mean if she did. They met on a Thursday afternoon, at a small cafe just off Main Street, the kind of place that hadn't changed much in 20 years. Margaret arrived early. She chose a table by the window, ordered coffee, didn't drink it. When Daniel walked in, she recognized him immediately, older of course, his hair thinner, touched with gray, but it was still him. In the way he paused just inside the door, scanning the room, in the way his eyes settled on her and softened. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he smiled. And just like that, 30 years disappeared. "Hi, Maggie." "Hi, Daniel." They talked for hours. About everything. About nothing. About the lives they had lived in between. Margaret told him about her marriage. Her husband had been kind, steady. They had built a good life together, raised 2 children, and when he passed away 5 years earlier, it felt like the world had quietly shifted beneath her feet. Daniel listened, the same way he always had, fully without interruption. Then he told her his story, a marriage that hadn't lasted, years spent moving from place to place, a life that looked full from the outside but often felt incomplete. "I thought about writing to you," he admitted at one point, "more times than I can count." Margaret looked down at her coffee. "I did too." There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just honest. I drove by your house last week, Daniel said. I don't know why. I just did. Margaret smiled faintly. It's always been there. I know, he said. I think that's why. As the afternoon faded into evening, something shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough to be noticed. When they stood up to leave, Daniel hesitated. Then he reached out, just briefly, and took her hand. It was such a small thing, but it wasn't. Margaret felt it immediately. Not just the touch, but everything behind it. All the years, all the moments that never happened, all the words they never said. She didn't pull away. They began seeing each other after that, slowly, carefully. Walks in the park. Dinners that stretched longer than planned. Conversations that picked up right where they had left off decades earlier. One evening, sitting on her porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel said quietly, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if things had been different?" Margaret considered the question. "Sometimes," she said. "Do you?" "All the time." She turned to him. "And what do you think?" Daniel smiled, not with regret, but with something gentler. "I think we would have been happy." Margaret nodded. "I think so too." There was another pause, then she added, "But I also think we weren't ready back then." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. "And now?" Margaret didn't answer right away. She reached for his hand instead, held it, steady, certain. "I think we are now." They didn't rush into anything. No grand declarations, no sudden changes. Just two people who had lived enough life to understand what mattered and what didn't. A year later, they were married. A small ceremony, just family, a few close friends, nothing extravagant, but everything meaningful. At the reception, Margaret's daughter raised a glass. "To timing," she said with a smile. "Because sometimes it really does get it right." Margaret looked at Daniel. He squeezed her hand gently. And in that moment, she realized something she hadn't fully understood before. Their story hadn't started late. It had simply taken its time. And somehow that made it even stronger. Because the love they had now wasn't rushed, wasn't uncertain, wasn't waiting for someday. It was here, it was real. And this time, they didn't let it slip away.